Well, Mark, as I told you, I want to do this interview for two things. First, of course, is just to talk about Kingdom of Madness, the concerts in Spain, blah, 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 all those things, of course. And also I want to talk about about you in general, about Magnum, and about some information for the book that I'm writing about, new wave for British heavy metal, but especially about the bands around, the environment, the social things around the movement. Okay, so all those things.
Yeah, far away.
Yes, a long time ago, of course. So, first, just to begin, Mark, just in general, nice to talk to you. I'm now recording, so I tell you again because I'm recording. It's great to talk to you, the classic keyboard player of Magnum, now with Kingdom of Madness, and, a long story in your life. So, let's talk first about Kingdom of Madness in general. So explain for the people, just to begin, just in general, what is this? Because maybe the people, or some people, don't know about Kingdom of Madness.
No. Obviously, we haven't got a record deal, so that limits the amount of publicity we can get. But obviously, there's no point in me recording Magnum songs that were recorded, those years ago. And, I'm not trying to compete with the mighty Magnum. Magnum was... Yes, I was there for 36 odd years, 19 albums, so over half of my life. But Magnum wouldn't be Magnum without Tony and Bob.
Yes.
So, and the tragic news of Tony's passing was really upsetting, and Bob announcing that Magnum have now finished. All I can say is we'll keep the nightlight burning for those that want to continue to hear some of the Magnum classics, and of course, in Kingdom of Madness, I'm blessed with some great musicians, namely, in my opinion, the best drummer Magnum ever had, Mickey Barker. It's a great pleasure to be playing with him again. I've got Richard Bailey, who was on the first two albums, the original keyboard player. Obviously myself. I've got Mo Birch, my wife, who's been on, who's toured with Magnum and been on Magnum albums and videos. So, it's not a tribute band as such, because we'd be playing tribute to our own parts, if you like, So, obviously, to call it Magnum would have been wrong, because Magnum, like I say, would have been Tony and Bob, obviously. And God rest Tony's soul, it's very sad. But he's left a great legacy of music, and we play the music that we were involved with at that time, which was, in my opinion, Magnum at its peak, when we were at the top of our game, So I'm looking forward to playing Spain again, because last time I played in Spain was with Magnum, obviously. So
yes,
I hope a lot of people come along, and it'd be nice to see everyone and meet them and everything. So looking forward to it. Very excited.
Yes, it's interesting. You said an interesting point, and I remember to talk with Robert Mills, the promoter, about this. That that those kind of bands, we are talking about Kingdom of Madness now, but some people can think that this is a tribute band, but this is not true, because in the band there are three classic members of the band, especially you that have been here for more than 30 years. Of course, you said the first keyboard player, the drummer that was there in between 80 and 85, whatever. And
over 10 years.
Yes. So it's important to clarify and to tell the people that, you said before, but just to talk a little bit about this, that first, it's not a tribute band. You have all the rights to do it. And on the second hand, it's interesting to tell that this is a celebration of the Magnum history, classic songs, blah, blah, blah. And it's very interesting to see this at the moment that, unfortunately, Magnum is not here anymore.
No, and, that's... it's the end of an era, a big era, and that's sad. But I'm happy and proud to keep the nightlight burning, as they say. And, as you say, I'd like to think it's a tribute to Tony Clarkin, what we're doing.
Yes, interesting point.
But as you say, it's hardly a tribute band. And the most embarrassing thing was I was asked to put my name above Kingdom of Madness, so it's Mark Stanway's Kingdom of Madness, which embarrassed me a little bit, but that was purely so people understood that it was actual members of Magnum playing here, not just anybody, you know. So that was the reason. So forgive me for having my name above it.
Yes. I have the curiosity to know about Richie Bailey, because it was the keyboard player before you, right?
That's right. I took over from Richard, I mean, Richard's great. I've known him, well, since the beginning. And he brings a lot to the band, not just keyboard playing, but he's a fine flautist, and he plays guitar as well, which is great on certain songs, you know, that we play from long ago that require two guitars, you know. So we're doing our best to be faithful to the great songs that we were involved with, and indeed that Tony wrote, you know. So we're all very proud of what we're doing, and it's a happy band.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind me saying, it's a great band.
Yes. It's interesting that, in the set list or the music that you are playing, is based on the classic years of Magnum from 78 until, 94, 92, whatever we want to say about that, but especially the classic era, to say something. So it's interesting just to know in general about, how do you see looking since now those songs, when you are playing now those songs with other people, you are probably studying in some sense those songs, where you're looking back at it and think, okay, we did real good songs, real good music.
I mean, first of all, it's absolutely amazing, the catalogue of songs Magnum have, you know.
It's incredible, it's incredible. As I told you, sorry.
250 odd songs, you know, and when I was with the band, because Tony was continually writing, he was only really interested in playing the songs from the next album. And so he didn't like to look backwards. He only wanted to look forwards, which I understand as a creator and a writer that he was. And when I was in the band, people would continually ask me, why don't you play Wild Swan? Why don't you play Storyteller's Night? You know, there's so many songs, obviously. So the particular set that we're going to bring over to Spain was actually chosen primarily by the fans. I asked them what they wanted to hear, and we took a short list, and we came up with, obviously, the big songs, you know, things like Storyteller's Night, you know. That was a turning point for Magnum. You know, we'd been up and down the motorways in a van, you know, trying to make a name for ourselves. And when that album came out, it was a turning point for the band. So I think it's important to play certain songs off those albums. We try and play a song off every album that we all were involved with, which is why we stop at 1995, I think. So, you know, so that's the era. We're trying to keep it classic.
It's interesting. I told you on my first email that we did a special program in my radio program. We are doing now some special programs about bands, about the styles, about whatever, long programs, about 3 hours, and especially when we are doing big programs about a band. It's interesting to listen all the records, to study all the story behind, blah, blah, blah. And we did a special program about Magnum when Tony died. And it was incredible for me to remember all the albums, to listen the albums again. And you said before, the incredible catalog that Magnum has. In every album you had 4, 5, 6 songs, incredible. Especially from that 78 to 92, to say something. It's incredible how many incredible songs you create, to say something.
It is an impressive catalogue of music, it really is. And obviously during the times, you know, I go back to myself and Mickey Barker, Wally Lowe, Bob and Tony, which was the band at its peak. We all had an incredible amount of artistic input in those days. So, you know, to give you an example, songs like The Last Dance, which was on Storyteller's Night, where I've still got the original demo of that, and that was an up-tempo dance song. And, you know, I went home after one of the sessions when we were recording Storyteller's Night, and I was playing it on the piano. I thought this would make a great ballad. So So I came up with the piano part. It's still the chords that Tony wrote, obviously, but I came up with a different arrangement, and that was used. And so, it ended up a slow ballad. So we all had great input in those days. It was only in the event of computers did that change. And when I felt the artistic input from the individuals ceased to be like that, it didn't excite me or give me the enthusiasm to record albums anymore. It was a bit, everything was done with one finger, at a time on a computer, and that spoilt the creativity for me, which is one of the reasons I left, So I didn't feel like I was in a creative band anymore. It was just
I understood
one guy recording everything at home and then bringing it to the studio, and everything was basically written. So, we just, obviously, if he's created a piano part one finger at a time or whatever, obviously better to have a piano player play it when it comes to the album, but it just took away that artistic input and creativity for me, which was a shame. Technology has many advantages, but in this case, I think it stifled the potential that some of those songs could have been. Like the old days, I can remember the album Rock Art as an example. We were all set up in the studio as a live band, and we would thrash it out until we came up with an arrangement that everybody thought was the best, as opposed to 4 of that, 8 of that, and everything a computer ends up doing. So, Rock Art's one of my favourite albums, actually. That was the creative point of view, where it was played as a band, it wasn't computerized.
Yes. Everyone knows.
Old school, you'll have to.
Old school, the vintage thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that in Magnum, Tony Clarkin was the music and lyrics were all made by Tony, and it was a thing that, it was that, and it was a reason, as you tell, for you to leave, or for the people to be not so happy about this. Bob Catley said many times that for him was very comfortable, but for you, I guess, not so comfortable. The point was that in Magnum, the sound, your melodies, your arrangement, the sound of the piano and the keyboard was really, really important in the sound. So I had always the idea that first, you were not very happy with this, but second, you can be happy at the same time that your sound was very, very recognizable and very important for the songs in Magnum, for the sound of Magnum in general. So you have to be a dual thing. First, I'm not happy, and second thing, I'm happy because I was very important for that. How was your point of view? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it. If I'm not sort of feeling like I'm part of the creation of that song, in the old days, let's say before Wings of Heaven album, so everything up to Wings of Heaven, we'd thrash it out as a band, and we'd go and play them live before we recorded it. So we'd exploited every avenue to get the best out of that song. Tony used to play us the song on an acoustic guitar. And then Mickey would say, well, how about this sort of beat? And Wally would put the bass to that beat. And we all felt like we were part of it. And unfortunately, technology changed. I'm not knocking Tony's songwriting. Boy, I wished I could write as many songs and keep doing it as Tony. So a prolific songwriter, but he was open to the band having a big part of it. And it felt like a band, and when the band split up for a while, it was 95, in 5 years, and Tony and Bob did the Hard Rain thing, when we reformed, never felt the same to me. The rhythm section wasn't right, and, I'm not knocking those players, but when you've heard it done the best it could be, everything else was So it never felt like a band anymore, which was a shame, but there comes a point when I'd lost my enthusiasm, so that's really how it, to cut a very, very long story short.
Yeah.
That's what we did, I don't like computer music, and then it was all used on stage as well, lots of sequences and lots of parts coming off stage, and that interfered with your own playing, that you've got to continually listen to a click track and make sure you're in time with what's coming off a sequencer, that wasn't being in a band for me. So Kingdom of Madness, anyway, don't use any sequences or click tracks. We play it how we used to, live, and it allows some spontaneity, and the enjoyment is there of playing it for real, without vocals and all sorts coming off sequencer, which I really didn't approve of.
Yes. Okay. When I did the special program about Magnum, I was, as I told you, studying the things about the story, blah blah blah. And I have a curiosity about the beginnings, about your beginnings in the band, because you started with Magnum in about 79 or first 80, for the tour of the second album. But just before to record 11th Hour, you went out. Because the band was totally broke, without a penny, and I don't know exactly what happened there.
That's right. Yeah.
Tell me about that story, because I'm not sure about what really happened.
Okay. Without getting myself into trouble, we were signed to Jet Records at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And they wouldn't release us from the contract at that time. And I'm married with 3 children. I needed to pay the rent.
Yeah, of course.
And I was asked to do a tour of Sweden with Phyl, Lynnot, John Sykes, Brian Downey, basically Thin Lizzy. Mm-hmm. And that was income. So I started doing that. Mm-hmm. Now, I carried on doing the thing with Grand Slam, unfortunately, the sad death of Phyl Lynnot. Mm-hmm. That's another story. But basically, during that time, Magnum got free of Jet Records. Mm-hmm. Got a new manager in, Keith Baker. Mm-hmm. And we signed a new record deal. And Tony asked me, he said, look, we've got a deal. Come on back. So I went back. Mm-hmm. So I didn't actually leave. I just had to earn a living at the time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that was the long and the short of it. As soon as Magnum got a deal again and we were working, I went back. Mm-hmm. And after that... So, yeah, I didn't miss any recordings. I did the album. I did Storyteller's Night. Mm-hmm. There was one tour without me.
Okay.
One 6-week British tour without me, and then I was back.
Yeah, okay. And in the meantime, was very interesting, that project, the Grand Slam thing, it was like a new Thin Lizzy. Really, it was a new Thin Lizzy with John Sykes, with Phyl Lynnot, of course, with you, and, well, it's incredible that Grand Slam, then, because they were joined after blah, 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 and of course, after Phyl Lynnot was totally a different thing, but in that moment, you were there like some months, but that project was incredible. The sound was, of course, very Thin Lizzy, in some kind of White Snake theme, but it was a lot of good songs or good, a little tour or whatever then. And what do you remember of the Grand Slam thing, those months?
Yeah, of course, originally it was John Sykes in the band. This is before we called it Grand Slam, but he got the offer to join Whitesnake. But we started writing. Mm-hmm. And it was great that I was part of the writing as well, Mm-hmm. All those Grand Slam songs, I had a part in all of them, which was being creative. Mm-hmm. But of course, my heart was still with Magnum, and Phyl was going through a bad time with his drink and drugs, etc. Great shame. Yeah. Well, an absolute star, Phyl was. So talented, and I'm so proud that we were friends. He used to stay at my house at the weekend and sleep on the settee, we were very close, so that was very sad. Mm-hmm. But Grand Slam couldn't get a deal because of Phil's reputation. Mm-hmm. And then I get the call from Keith Baker, who took over the management of Magnum,
yes,
saying, "You've got to come back. We got a deal."
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
I went back. I went back, and tragically, about 3 months after that, Phyl died.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was all a very sad situation. But so I didn't leave Magnum. I just had to earn a living while
Yes.
Magnum weren't. So
Okay.
that's the truth. So.
Mm-hmm. There is another good story in those moments that I want to ask you about the rumor that John Sykes really offered you to join Whitesnake. Before Whitesnake, and David Coverdale said that no, that they have never offered you to be inside Whitesnake because John Sykes offered you whatever, but Whitesnake was David Coverdale. There was any real thing in that story, or it was another rumor?
Yes, there's a lot of truth in that story.
Uh-huh.
I did get a call to say, would I be interested?
Uh-huh.
And I said, yes, I would, because my Grand Slam weren't going anywhere.
Uh-huh.
Magnum still hadn't got the deal.
Uh-huh.
So I said, yes, I would be interested. But unfortunately, the story got out somehow into, I think it was Kerrang. And because the story got out, Coverdale denied it all and said that wasn't the case. But it was the case.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting and it's funny because you were a great musician, hard rock vibe, you were tall, nice, handsome, long blonde hair. You fit perfect for those Whitesnake before 1987, of course.
That's right, yeah. I think the whole package would have been right in David's head. Mm-hmm. But as I say, the story got out somehow into Kerrang and it didn't happen.
Yeah, okay.
But the other thing is, Phyl was so upset when John had to leave. He understood that he had to go because it was a great financial offer for John to go there. Mm-hmm. I couldn't say yes straight away to the possibility of that because Phyl was still really distraught about losing John, So, I mean, he wanted to split up, but I said, hang on, I know another guitarist that's very good. And I introduced him to Lawrence Archer, and so we carried on. That's cutting a very long story short.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, let's come back to Magnum, and in those moments you come back to Magnum, and you recorded on a Storyteller's Night, and it was a great success, but not on the first moments. On the first moment, I remember studying that the album was released by a small record label, FM Records.
Yeah.
And after that was the success, you signed with Polydor after or whatever, but on the first moment on a Storyteller's Night, it wasn't so successful, right?
Yes, it was our first gold album. It took a while to go gold because we did 3 tours playing Storyteller's Night. But eventually it went gold. I think it might even have gone platinum since, but I never got any of the discs, unfortunately.
Yes. Okay.
So it was a milestone that changed Magnum's career.
Yes.
But it wasn't overnight, as you say. We did 3 tours. So it took about 18 months before it really picked up. And then obviously we got the likes of Roger Taylor interested when we went to do the next album, Vigilante, which was another step up, And by that time we were headlining Hammersmiths and the big theatres, which was great,
With Vigilante was interesting because, Vigilante and Wings of Heaven, maybe together. In Spain, we had the idea that you were big in America, in USA, in those years. And after that, studying that, we realized that you didn't do anything in America. You were just big in UK, big in Europe in general, but you didn't have the success in America.
After Wings of Heaven, which was very successful, I did get a silver album for that, but, and that since went gold. But after that, we wanted to up the production. We weren't overly pleased with the production of Wings of Heaven, and we spoke to a few producers, but namely Keith Olsen, because he'd just done Foreigner, he'd done The Scorpion. It wasn't anything to do with catering for the American market. We just wanted that production. which was very radio friendly as well. So it didn't even get released in America.
This is the point. I was reading about that, and I was studying, and at that I realized that, okay, Magnum wasn't anything in America.
No, and we weren't trying to break the American market or anything like that. Obviously, if we had done, that would have been great, but that wasn't the intention. We just wanted a top producer so we could sound as good as we possibly could, you know, and next thing, we're accused of going American. Well, they didn't accuse us of going Dutch when we recorded Wings of Heaven in Holland, or they didn't accuse us of going Swiss when we did Vigilante in Switzerland. But going to America, everybody thought we were trying to become American or break America, and that wasn't the intention. We just wanted a great producer. As I say, it never even got released in America. So it didn't do us any good, really, Goodnight LA. And yet there's some great songs on it. You know, and,
yes.
One of those things that didn't work, and Keith Baker, the manager, also was going through some personal problems, and his enthusiasm waned, and you know, things just went a bit downhill from that, you know. And so really, Wings of Heaven, we peaked, and it started to very slowly peter off after that, which is a shame. So 1 minute you're in fashion and the next you're not.
Yes, and it was at the end of the 80s, the things were changing, the music scene, whatever was changing, and well, it was strange anyway, because bands like you, I mean, Whitesnake, Def Leppard, even Bonfire, to say something from Germany, whatever, Crocus, they were working really well. In America, and Magnum, that you were better probably, or at the same level are Whitesnake or Def Leppard, you were not working there.
No, I mean, we never, we only played in America once, and that was when we were signed to Jet Records. We supported Ozzy.
Yes,
on the Diary of a Madman tour, you know. That's purely because we were with that record company, and we were managed by Sharon Arden at the time.
Yeah.
Later become Sharon Osbourne, obviously. And so we did a fairly lengthy American tour. You know, if you don't follow it up, it's such a vast country, you know, you're forgotten about instantly. So yeah, we never got to play America again.
I read in an interview talking about those years and those things that, well, you said, and Tony Clarkin said then, that was very hard for Magnum to have the pressure over your heads about to achieve hits, number ones, whatever, when you were not that kind of band. I mean, you have long and complex songs, melodic songs, but at the same time not easy songs. The lyrics, for example, the lyrics were very deep, and you were not talking about love, sex, cars, for instance, whatever. You were a different band, and especially in the first 90s, was very difficult for you to have that pressure on your heads, being a band like Magnum, I mean.
Yeah, I think the record company put pressure on Tony to co-write with people, which he hated doing and didn't want to do, and refused to do again. I mean, okay, we did things like Rocking Chair with Russ Ballard, and we did Matter of Survival on the Goodnight LA album, which was co-written with Jim Balance, etc. And when the record company asked Tony to consider doing this again, he flatly refused, and we got dropped then.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we didn't try and make the songs get on top of the pops, if you like. Even though we did that 3 or 4 times, you know, Tony did write some commercial songs, you know, but that was not what we were about. We were an album band, really, and, you know, and a great live band with a big dramatic show with, you know, which pop bands don't do, you know. So, you know, when I think of the effort and time, effort and money that went into our stage production, you know, where Mickey and I, Mickey the drummer and myself, would be pulled up into the air 20 foot on chains, you know, and the lighting rig would move, and, you know, that wouldn't look quite right with a pop group. Mm-hmm. So Magnum was known for its great live shows, and we were an album band. Mm-hmm. You know, there's never a thing about singles, you know, so one of those things, you know. I mean, obviously you need plays on the radio and the TV in order to get the exposure, but it was a bit of a catch-22, really. Mm-hmm. We went pop band, you know, so, you know, like Coverdale, you mentioned a few times, like White Snake, you know, with that great song, Here I Go Again, you know, co-written with the great Bernie Marsden, rest his soul.
Yeah.
Everybody had to look good as well, you know, so that was aimed at the AOR market big time, you know. That's what Magnum, I mean, I seem to remember, I can't remember which magazine, but they said, Magnum, roadies in fancy dress.
Yeah. Okay.
So, you know, that wasn't what we were about. We just wanted to play music that had got depth. I mean, Tony's lyrics are still up there to me with the likes of your Bernie Taupins, and just a great lyricist. He really did write great lyrics. Well, as you say, pop songs about love and sex and stuff like that are not great lyrics, are they? It's just bland poetry. So, yeah, there was a lot of depth in what Magnum had to offer. So,
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe we were our own worst enemies.
Yes. Another part of Magnum that was interesting, that it was Magnum but not Magnum. I'm talking about Hard Rain. That it was the project that Tony and Bob did when Magnum was stopped in the mid-90s or whatever. What happened to you to be out of this? You had the opportunity, they did from themselves. What happened with Hard Rain?
Well, first of all, I think Bob left Hard Rain, which is why Tony said, let's reform Magnum. Mm-hmm. Bob wasn't that happy about Hard Rain either, you know, sharing the vocal spot with a girl. I mean, very good she was as well, you know. So, but that Bob's the front man and always should have been, you know. So, one of those things, and, you know, Bob left and did some solo stuff. And after a while, they said, look, we've got to reform Magnum. And that's when I got called saying, we can't really call it Magnum without me. So Tony called me up first, and I said, yes, I'll go back. You know, Mickey didn't want to. Mm-hmm. But that's what happened, basically. I mean, Tony needed a break from the pressure of Magnum, if the truth be known, you know.
Yeah.
And he had that break and then realised that his bread is buttered by being Magnum. So we reformed, and I mean, the first album when we reformed, I mean, they've got Mickey Barker's credited on it, but it was all machines. It was never really quite right for me from the time we did it, but I stayed for another, goodness knows how long, another 16 years, I think. Mm-hmm. But it was never the same.
Yeah.
Personally.
I agree with this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I have the information that the first time that you came to Spain, apart of going to the south to record the video clips during the Storytellers Night era, whatever, but you came here for the first time to play in 92, I guess, when the Sleepwalking tour. It was true, or you came before? I'm not sure. I haven't got that information, so I would like you to tell me, please. What was the first time you came to Spain? I think it was in 92.
You remember a long time ago. What I do remember is, we only played a couple of places in Spain, and Madrid obviously being one of them. Mm-hmm. And I've said from them to this day forward, that is the best audience I have ever had the privilege of playing in front of.
Whoa.
Was Madrid.
Great, thank you.
They stopped us for about 10 or 15 minutes and sang to us. They were so pleased that we were there, you know. I felt so humble. And, you know, I always said that a Scottish audience is probably one of the best in the world, but that day, Madrid, and I've said it ever since, was the best audience. Not the biggest audience, you know, I've played a far bigger audience. Mm-hmm. But that was just so humbling. The best audience. I'm so hoping we get a few people in there. So I can play those gigs again, you know, or get those feelings again.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. I have the curiosity to know, when I have the opportunity to talk to the classic musician as you, I have the curiosity to know about which ones are your favorite Magnum albums, because of course every musician tell always about that, well, they are like my sons, blah, 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 but of course you have your own favorites, of course. I remember to read in an interview, in an old interview, that you said that the curiosity that was that Keep the Nightlight Burning, the acoustic live album, was one of your favorites, because it was different album and less pressure album for you. Well, what was your favorite Magnum albums anyway?
There's different reasons for having a favourite album. I mean, Storyteller's Night still has a massive place in my heart. You know? And if you can believe this, you know, we recorded that in 14 days. And we did it for £9,000.
Wow.
And Kit Walburn produced it fantastically. Everybody was on form. So that has a special place in my heart. You know, as indeed Chase the Dragon being the first album I ever did with Magnum. You know, that was so exciting. So there's different reasons for having a favourite album, and obviously Tony's songs, you know, certainly for all the albums I played on, there was always unbelievable songs amongst them. The happiest album was Rock Art for me. That was the last time we played as a band without machines correcting everything, and you know, it was a real band. You know, that's how it was. So that's one of my happiest albums. So Rock Art's one of my favourites, but I think Sleepwalking's a great. They're all so good. The 11th Hour was a disappointment, but that was production-wise. There was some great songs on that album. Obviously, Vigilante, that was great working with the great Roger Taylor. And, you know, having him come up and sing on stage with us was a big thrill as well.
Well, yes, of course.
Yeah. I mean, he got the highest voice on. And he came on and did, what was the song we did? When the World Comes Down. Roger came on and sung backing vocals on that with us at Hammersmith 3 nights running, which was a big thrill, you know, and so I can't nail it down to one album, but the ones I've mentioned have got very special places in my heart.
Yes, of course. It's obvious that because the catalog of Magnum is amazing. Anyway, and talking about songs, it's even more amazing. I have especially, three. I have more songs that I love, but especially 3 of them that I would like to tell you that are probably my favorites. The first one would be Always Don't Wait the Lion. For me, it's the greatest song of probably all rock and roll. It's incredible. The second one would be The Prize. I love that song. And the third one is a more strange one that I know that you are playing this one, that is Back to Earth. I love that song.
Yeah, fantastic song. It's just so different to anything else you hear. And funny you should mention The Prize as well. I always loved that song as well. So we might even do that for you, David. Don't Wet the Lion. We may do that the next time we go out, but we haven't had the time to a lot of rehearsal required for that.
Yes, I can understand that.
But I would like to do that one again, so thanks for mentioning that one.
Great. Okay, just to finish the chat about Magnum, I would like to talk to you, to ask you a simple thing, but I have always in my mind this idea that, do you think that history is or have been fair with Magnum? I mean, you know, of course, that Magnum was an amazing band. The catalog of Magnum is amazing. There are no too much bands better than Magnum in history, but you never achieved the first line. Are you angry in some sense or disappointed with this, or it was history and whatever, bad luck?
I think what it is it all comes back to the charts and radio plays, obviously. Without those things happening, you don't get the exposure. And Magnum were never geared, to look as good as we could. I mean, we all tried, but that wasn't why we were doing it. You know, we're passionate about the music we were playing, but it wasn't geared. We weren't trendy, and I think that's what it is. So, no, I don't feel. I do feel disappointed that we didn't get the recognition maybe that we deserve, you know, and that would have included America as well, obviously, but we weren't geared, we weren't that type of band. So, you know, DJs, you know, the trendy DJs of the time would look at us and, not understand the music that we were playing, and therefore we didn't fit the cliche idea of what they think should be in the charts, you know. So we were not the ideal band for the media, if you like, at the time, you know. We didn't appeal to 18-year-olds. That's the way it was, but we weren't going to compromise that, obviously, because, you know, a die-hard Magnum audience, you couldn't ask for a better audience to play to. You really couldn't, you know. They'd listen to every note, every word, you know, the most passionate audiences. Well, in all fairness, you know, that doesn't include screaming girls, you know, and which we weren't that type of band.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, just to finish the interview, or the last part of the interview, I have some questions, if you don't mind, about that new wave of British heavy metal thing, or the points around new wave of British heavy metal, but talking about Magnum and even Grand Slam. And I have the curiosity first about that. Well, about Magnum first. We continue with Magnum in this sense. Of course, Magnum is not a band from new wave of British heavy metal. You were part of the pioneers box, to say something that was a reference for the rest of the bands. You were in the box, to say something, of Deep Purple, Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, even Rainbow and Magnum. You were a reference for the bands that after formed the new wave of British heavy metal. How do you see it? Do you see Magnum part of the movement in some sense or not?
I mean, it's nice to be included as part of the original, I'd prefer to call it, you know, hard rock. Unlike, say, Black Sabbath, a great example, you know, obviously we know all those guys as well, coming from Birmingham.
Yes, I know.
But no, you didn't have keyboards in those things, so we got the subtlety side, which some of those bands didn't. That wasn't what they were about, like saying, you know. I remember saying to Lenny, I said, I love your band, if only you had keyboards, and we both laughed about it, because that wouldn't have worked, would it? Keyboards in Motorhead, it wouldn't have worked. But, so the new wave of British heavy metal, that was strange, because a lot of bands came under that heading, and in all fairness, I don't think we had anything to do with it. You know, we did what we did, and we stuck at it. I mean, there was a lot going on in 1979, 1980, you know, 80 when April 80, I joined Magnum. You got all the punk thing starting to happen, you know, which was, that became the trend for a while, didn't it? You know, the punk side. Well, you know, the likes of Def Leppard shone through and got through and became huge, fair enough, and their albums sounded fantastic. Magnum didn't fit any of those, fit under any of those things. You know, we didn't sound like anybody else, which that made us proud. And we didn't try to. You know, we were obviously influenced by many bands at the time. You know, it wasn't influenced, you know, by say Led Zeppelin or the Beatles. You know, the legends of forever. But
yes,
you know, when Def Leppard were doing massive business, we weren't influenced by anything other than maybe the production, which is why we sought out Keith Olsen in America, because we thought that production sounded great, but it backfired on us.
I have the theory, writing the book, or studying the movement, or studying the things around that, I have the theory, or I have made my own theory about that. Well, for example, Motorhead or Venom, even Black Sabbath started a movement in one side. For example, another bands like, for example, Judas Priest directly was the main reference for the totally heavy metal side of the new wave of British heavy metal.
Yeah.
But especially you, Magnum, and Thin Lizzy, you were the reference of the more melodic bands. I mean, for example, Tigers of Pantan, Tokyo Blade, even, I know, another bands, less important bands like Persian Risk, even Def Leppard. You were the main influence, I mean, Magnum in one side and Thin Lizzy on the other side, for those melodic side of the new wave of British heavy metal, and I'm totally sure of that.
Well, I think collectively in Magnum at the time, you know, melody is what was the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you can't remember a chorus, you know, we weren't trying to write pop songs, for heaven's sake, but, you know, if you're going to do a song, then make it melodic where you can.
Mm-hmm.
Surely that's what music should be. It should be positive and pleasing to the ear, not hurting your ear. All the choruses Magnum did, certainly on the 18 or 19 albums I did, they were all such great choruses, you know, that people could actually sing along to, you know, without actually being pop music. And so melody, to this day, is the most important part of a piece of music as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it should always be positive. Magnum were always positive lyrically as well. There was never anything negative because we all collectively agreed that music should not be used in a negative way, you know. So we had certain unwritten morals between us that, you know, you'd never hear, for argument's sake, any swear words or profanities being sung on a Magnum album, you know, and we're proud of that. You'd never hear Bob Catley swear on stage, even though the audience probably would have loved to hear him swear. But there were young people there, and as far as we're concerned, that's not what music should be used for, you know. Profanity, blasphemy, and, you know, it was all positive, you know. If we did write a song that had got some anarchy in it, it was about war or something, you know, and how wrong war is or something. Everything should be positive, or in our heads, music should only be used in a positive way, and I still feel like that to this day. So that maybe set us a bit different to some bands, you know, that like to have devil worship and stuff, you know, but that was, Magnum were a million miles away from that idea, so that perhaps made us different to a lot of them.
Okay. In those last weeks, I have made some interviews with other musicians, with people from Saxon, from Girls' School, from Diamond Head, for example, and some more.
Yeah.
And they told me that, while we were talking about the movement, the new wave of British heavy metal, and blah, blah, blah in general, they told me that then, on the first 80s, whatever, they were not aware of the point that they were creating anything. At last, they didn't be conscious to say something that there were a movement around them. Of course, looking since now with perspective, 40 years after, all of us knows that there were a movement, that it was a lot of bands emerging those years, form a movement called New Wave for British Heavy Metal, and that before them there were another movement, British hard rock, as I told you before, Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Magnum, more bands, Thin Lizzy, blah, 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 that you were together in that movement. So you were in those years concerned that you were doing anything in the sense that movement or creating something together, or you were just doing music, to say something?
No. We used to actually get annoyed when we were referred to as heavy metal, because as far as I'm concerned, Magnum were never heavy metal. We could be hard, you know, Don't Wet the Lion, that gets heavy and hard, but it's not metal.
Yes.
As such, you know, so it confused us that we would come under that heading of which I personally can't be doing with new wave of British heavy metal. You know, I hated to be referred to as a heavy metal band. Only because we weren't. You know, you wouldn't hear Lemmy singing on a Storyteller's Night.
Yes.
Or Rob Halford singing on a Storyteller's Night. You know, these were the metal bands. Yes. But for some reason, and the UK especially, have to put you under a banner or a title. Mm-hmm. They can't just accept that we're a rock band.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The real thing anyway.
So it confused us. It just confused us all the time why we were, being referred to as new wave of heavy metal. It was annoying.
Yes, I can understand that. Well,
I'm not knocking the heavy metal,
Yeah.
It's just we weren't, it was just not us.
Yeah. Okay, I understand that. The other point that was for me very important, and it was B4 from Saxon, who told me the first sentence about it. I mean that, how to explain, in those years, for example, the rock music, hard rock, whatever, were most in the way that subversive, to say something, to reivindicate something, to protest against something, not in the punk way, but in some sense rock and roll was to fight against whatever. B4 told me one important sentence that for me now is like a mantra, that it was like rock music, hard rock music, to say whatever, was working class music made by working class people to working class audience. What do you think about that?
Yes and no. I use the word anarchy, there's a time and a place for it, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
And, if you're writing a song against the establishment, then
Mm-hmm.
great,
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of politics that we didn't agree with, but we tended to stay on the positive side and make the point that war is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's always the case with Magnum, and how futile it is. But we never got into the anarchy side. It's a weird thing, that was just, Magnum wasn't that. Magnum, it's like, how can I compare us? I'd like to say a band like, let's say Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
Songs like Carry On Your Wayward Son and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was a great band, great musicians,
Mm-hmm.
and you wouldn't have called them heavy metal.
Right.
But the Americans didn't have that thing that the UK had about giving you a banner on everything,
Uh-huh.
and gosh, I've been with Biff so many times, I've known him for years,
Mm-hmm.
from the early days when we were competing together, and what they do, there's a big market for us, like Iron Maiden,
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I know those guys so well. You don't get much bigger than Iron Maiden, do you? But that's just so not anything to do with what Magnum do.
Mm-hmm.
I got confused by the whole thing, to me it's got to have melody and positivity, and anything,
Mm-hmm.
if it hasn't got that, then I'm not really interested in being a part of it.
Yes, okay. Well, just...
you got to remember, I'm an old man now. And I was brought up on the Beatles, which were the most creative, musical, melodic band ever, as far as I'm concerned, and none of us would be here if it wasn't for them.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at, not perhaps say the Sex Pistols or something like that,
Yes. Okay. Just to finish the last question, Mark, I have the curiosity to know what happened in Birmingham. I mean, Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, Magnum, all of you were from Birmingham. How is it possible that probably the three biggest bands in metal, heavy metal, and hard rock were from the same city? What happened in Birmingham?
Yeah. It's interesting that, and Led Zeppelin,
Mm-hmm.
They were closer to Birmingham than anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Bonham we used to drink in the same pub as Bonham in the 70s. It's like everybody knew each other,
Mm-hmm.
and so I don't know. I guess it goes back to that working class thing,
Mm-hmm.
where that it is possible to do well without an education as such, or to be working class and succeed at doing something, if your
Mm-hmm.
heart's there and your passion,
Mm-hmm.
So it is strange that Birmingham boasts such a collection of the original hard rock. It's maybe it's to do with the industrial side, the working class side. I don't know. It's just a coincidence. But Birmingham at the time was a great music scene. And everybody knew each other. It was like a friendly scene, and everybody go and see each other play. I used to go and watch Magnum play when they were playing the pub every week, the Railway in Birmingham, and vice versa. When I was playing that with a different band, they'd come and check us out. Everybody was friendly, and none of us were earning any money in the early days. It's like, but the passion was there. That's what we wanted to do, and Ozzy's a wonderful example of that. You don't come more working class than Ozzy.
Yes. Yeah, it's absolutely true. Okay, Mark, so thank you so much for that interview, for all the information. I'm a big fan of Magnum.
Thank you,
so
David.
It's fantastic to can talk with one of the main characters of the band and make history. So, well, thank you so much, and I hope to see you in Spain in a few days. As I told you, of course, I'll be in Madrid. So I'll tell you hello, and me, and the journalist, the long interview.
We have a couple of sabbatics together.
Of course, after the show, for sure.
Yeah.
Mark, so as I told you, thank you so much for the interview, for this chat, for all the information, for my webpage, for my book, and whatever. And we'll talk more in Madrid, I hope.
Yeah, I'll bring you a copy of my book as well. I'll give you a copy of my book.
Oh, I would like to read it, of course.
Yeah, I'll bring you a copy.
Okay, and
And if you want to send me an email, I'll do you another ident and be more precise if you wish. Send me an email of exactly what you'd like me to say, and I'll do you another one.
Okay, of course, no problem. I'll do it, for sure. Okay, Mark, so thank you so much. Have a good evening, the rest of the evening. And,
yes, you too.
And see you in Spain in a few days. Thank you so much, Mark.
Look forward to meeting you, David. You take care.
Of course, same for you. Bye-bye.
Bye for now. Bye-bye.